Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to this year's Innovation Week, which is kindly organized by IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. My name is Frédéric Simon. I'm the Energy and Environment Editor of the online news portal euractiv.com, and I will be your host for the opening session of this week, which this year focuses on renewable solutions for transport and industry. There won't be time, unfortunately, to take questions from the audience during this opening session. However, you're welcome to exchange views using the chat function on WebEx, which is at the bottom of your screen. I hope in this way we can make this session a little bit interactive as well. Now, we will start this opening session with a conversation with the energy commissioners of the European Union and the African Union. But before I turn to them, let me pass on the floor to Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA, who will introduce this year's topic. Francesco, over to you now.
In this dialogue. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you to IRENA 2020 Innovation Week. I am particularly pleased we are joined by Commissioners About Zaid and Simpson, both whom are IRENA close friends and partners. I am also delighted that ministers from Canada, Germany, Indonesia, UAE and the UK, and the President of the World Economic Forum will share their perspective on the future of energy transition in this opening. Thank you for being with us today. The goal of IRENA Innovation Week is to drive attention to transform the global energy system. To achieve this, we brought together a diverse group of policymakers, entrepreneurs, and innovators. We want to inspire, inform, and create a space to learn from each other. This week is about innovation, is creating a solution we need to transform our energy systems, and they will hone into the action needed to unlock their potential. This is the third edition of IRENA Innovation Week, which we have held every 2 years since 2016 in Bonn. Unfortunately, this time we are not able to meet in person, but we are delighted to bring together participants from all IRENA global membership, people from over 140 countries registered to be with us in the next days. Previous Innovation Weeks focus on solutions for the power sector and the integration of higher share of renewables. Whilst much remains to be done, we have made remarkable strides in this area. Thanks in part to technological advanced renewables are the most, at least cost option for power production in most locations around the world. This week, even our area center on different challenges in the energy transition, one in which much more progress is needed, the decarbonisation of the most challenging sectors of industry and transport. As the scientific understanding of climate change has deepened and awareness on climate risk has grown, the urgency of tackling all CO2 emissions is clear. Increasingly, attention is focused on the need to limit temperature rise to 1.0 degrees Celsius, and the economic opportunity such a shift presents. To achieve this, decision makers in both the public and private sectors need a clear view of what needs to be done. They need to know what is realistic, what it will cost, and what the benefits will be. At the request of our members, IRENA stepped up its work to provide this insight and support countries making informed choice.
Francesco, we can hardly hear you. Can you speak a little bit louder? Because I think your microphone is probably a bit far from you.
Okay, thank you, Frederick, for telling me this. I hope it's getting better. IRENA Annual Global Renewable Outlook included an assessment of the pathway to zero emission. And 2 weeks ago, we published the Reaching Zero with Renewables report. The report shows that renewables can offer viable solutions, providing at least half of the emission cuts needed in 7 hard-to-abate sectors, including the production of iron and steel, cement and chemicals, as well as aviation, shipping, and road freight. Some of those options looked impossible just a few years ago. But innovations, failing technology cost, and policy shift have now created credible path to cut emission to zero. Innovation could not serve to bail out the past, using an expression used by the IRENA sector in general. I should say it has not to retrofit the past, but serve to build the future energy system, naturally cleaner, but also capable to better share the direct and indirect benefits of the clean energy between the developing and developed world, a more sustainable and just energy system. There is a lot we can do together. One of the themes that are at core of IRENA work now from several years is the green hydrogen. Since we released our first analysis on the topic, it has rapidly moved from niche issues to a mainstream consideration for decarbonizing end-use sectors. All our efforts will be needed to take it to the next level, along with many other emerging solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, and none of us know what its full impact will be. However, we know that climate crisis cannot be ignored. The response to the pandemic, with an unprecedented intervention of the state, opened political and economic space for transformative change. We have once-in-a-generation possibility to make a decisive shift toward an energy system fit for the 21st century. As we recover from the impact of this pandemic, we need to align short-term responses with the long-term climate and development objectives. By tapping the vast potential of cost-effective renewables, we can kickstart our economies, create jobs, embed resilience in net zero analysis. Thank you, and back to you, Frederick.
Thank you, Francesco. Now let me immediately jump to the first session of this year's Innovation Week with a regional perspective on the energy transition. So let me please welcome now Mrs. Kadri Simpson, the EU's Energy Commissioner, and Mrs. Amani Abu Zaid, the Energy Commissioner of the African Union. Thanks to both of you for joining us today. And let me start by asking a similar question to both of you, and we'll start with Kadri Simpson. When talking about decarbonisation, why do you think we need a focus on transport and industry? And where do you see the major challenges and opportunities there for the European Union? Kadri Simpson. So I think we don't have the connection here with Kadri Simpson. Maybe we can turn to Mrs. Abu Zaid first then. Is Mrs. Abu Zaid with us here?
Yes, of course. Yes. Hello, Frederick.
Same or similar question to you.
Yes, but I think maybe we give Commissioner Simpson another opportunity to unmute. Maybe she can. Can you unmute, Kadri? It's not. Well, waiting. Then maybe your team will help with that later. But first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel, and let me thank IRENA for a strong partnership and commitment to Africa. And this is something that IRENA has demonstrated over and over again. I welcome all those who are present, and I hope that we will be joined very shortly by Her Excellency Commissioner Simpson from the European Union as well. Frederic, I mean, the issue of CO2 emissions, I think all studies, whether they are the World Bank, IEA, IRENA, they all demonstrate that the biggest share of large share of emissions is emanating from the transport and industry sectors. Here we talk about the global level. But I want to focus my intervention maybe about Africa. Africa's share when it comes to CO2 emissions in general is very low. We're talking 2%, and even with economic growth in Africa, it can raise to 3%. That said, the share of transport within those emissions is very large. Almost a quarter of that, or more than a quarter, comes from transport. And if we dig even deeper, we will see that the majority of the CO2 emissions in transport come from road transportation. So that is one reason to focus on transport. But also when we talk about industry for Africa, remember, industry in Africa is still nascent. It's not the same at the same scale that we can see in some other parts of the world. However, with the growing population of Africa, especially the young people, the free trade area, our resolve and hope is to create also a large the continent, a large market that produces and that manufactures, and that we climb the value chain of processing and manufacturing in Africa, which raises also the question about the CO2 emission. Maybe we are in our our transport or our nascent industries, we are also focusing on energy efficiency. Because what do we see, I mean, happening now in our markets? The transport systems, are using old vehicles or imported vehicles with shaky standards when it comes to energy, and these, submerge our markets. And our call has been, and still is, is that we are calling on both exporters, producers, and also to the users and consumers on the continent to improve this situation and to make sure that what we import, what we use as equipment and transport vehicles are up to standards and respect the CO2 emissions. And as we recover after COVID-19, we want to recover into a better world, and not to keep producing or reproducing the mistakes of the past. We have a fantastic opportunity in Africa, given all the natural resources that we are having, and we do believe that that we can make this move into a clean energy, given that this clean energy is abundantly available in Africa. And we do have a large number of programs that I can talk about. But another major shift that we are seeing in our continent and in Africa is the improvements in mass transit systems. And the African Union is also supporting a program for railways in order to reduce the emissions, but as I said, by the vehicles and the road transport that we've seen. And we can maybe later on in the discussion talk about other modes of transportation. But I can see that Commissioner Simpson's microphone has been unmuted, so maybe this is an opportunity for her to come in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Abou-Zeid. We'll be back with you in a minute. Kedri Simpson, I believe you've now joined us. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, and thank you to organizers for unmuting my microphone. Good morning, Dr.
So, yes, a regional perspective. We just heard from Mrs. Abou-Zeid the challenges and opportunities as she sees them from her place, which is the African Union. So maybe you can speak a little bit. How do you see the challenge of decarbonisation from the European Union perspective, especially with a focus on transport and industry?
Well, this is interesting, but basically our opportunities and challenges, they are very similar than African ones. So as you know, we made also plans for 2020, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we have achieved our targets, but mainly because what is happening in energy sector. So transition in the energy sector, because our member states, they have phased out fossil fuel power plants, mainly coal power plants, faster than we predicted. And that has created a situation where, for example, this spring, there were a couple of days in a couple of member states where almost all the electricity came from renewable sources. But now we have raised our target for 2030 so that we will finally become climate neutral by 2050. And that means that other sectors, they have to follow. And well, the other sectors are transport, industry, but in our case also housing, building sector, because 40% of the energy that we consume, it is due to the heating or cooling. So how to make our building stock more energy efficient is also one of the priorities for us. But we raised 2 weeks ago our greenhouse gas reduction target for 2030. So we will reduce it at least by 55%. And that means that in the electricity sector, 65% of the electricity must come from renewables. This is the reason why we try to achieve a situation where most of the end users will start using electricity. So there are heat pumps in heating sector. There are electric cars, and we can make them more comfortable for consumers when we build charging stations all across Europe. But of course, there are sectors where electricity is not a solution. It is either technically impossible or it is just too costly. And for these sectors, well, in industry, this is cement, steel. In transport, this is long haul vehicles, also heavy trucks. Well, we have to find something else so that they can do their part too and phase out oil. And it seems that there is existing technology already available. This is hydrogen. So this July, we published our hydrogen strategy. We will create a existing hydrogen market here in Europe, because here in Europe, we do have some member states who are planning to produce more hydrogen than they will consume themselves. But at the same time, there are industrial regions that need more green hydrogen than they can produce. And of course, hydrogen has also very strong international aspect, because in our close neighborhood, there are countries who do have wonderful solar or wind resources. And then finally, we do believe that we can transport hydrogen also on long distances. But at first, we will launch hydrogen valleys around the locations where we do have here in Europe best opportunities to produce green hydrogen.
Kadri Simpson, you mentioned those hydrogen valleys. Can you maybe share a few examples of what the European Union countries are doing when it comes to addressing emissions from transport and industry?
Well, there are different good examples. For example, up north in Sweden, we will have a pilot project for a clean steel making. So factory who will phase out fossil fuels and will use as a feedstock green hydrogen. But this is, of course, not market compatible yet, so they need the support to do so. But we do expect that when you will have a significantly bigger volumes, then price comes down. We have witnessed it with solar panels. At first, they were relatively costly, but by now they are competitive if you compare them with other energy sources. And well, in south, we will have an island of Mallorca who becomes a hydrogen island, so that they will produce their own energy. And well, what it means for our member states that they will become also more energy independent, because right now Europe is one of the biggest natural gas importers and oil importers, but with the renewables, you produce them here. So this is also opportunity, but of course, again, challenge because of the volatility and peak hours.
Thank you, Kadri Simpson. Let me put the same question to you now, Mrs. Abu Zaid. Can you share with us concrete examples of what African countries are doing to address emissions from transport and industry. And maybe you can also share some thoughts about what, in your view, needs to be done to accelerate this.
Let me just start with energy for industry, because energy for industry is generating energy. We have to remember that Africa is generating energy from renewable sources as a necessity, not just as a transition. It is very often our primary source of energy, because they are abundant, and now the prices are cheaper, but also because half of we still have 600 million people who do not have access to electricity, and we have almost 900 million people who do not have clean cooking, which means they cut the forest and use firewood for cooking. So these are major challenges. So our aim and our goal is to ensure universal access to electricity, and for that we are using and we are trying all available sources to the continent. And as I said, what comes to mind right away is renewable, because they are readily available. And I must say that COVID-19 has made this choice, if you will, easier, because what happened, when the supply chains were interrupted, it became clear that reliance on imported fuel is not an option, but rather you use what you have, and we do have the sun, and we have other, as I said, sources. So that is for the energy per se. We must remember that Africa has done, a lot in that sense. Just as a reminder, 2 of the largest solar power plants in the world are in Africa, in Morocco and in Egypt, and that we do have the Eastern Africa almost relying on geothermal energy for 40% of its energy, and we do have some of the large programs for wind energy, in addition, of course, to smaller plants. Digitalization is adding new promise to this sector, because it introduces new unconventional solutions when it comes to energy. So for our nascent industry, we do have a great potential and great plans going forward. Now for transport, because transport, these are things that are happening now. It is also in Africa that we are seeing factories now converting cars, or workshops converting the traditional fuel into natural gas, which is the cleanest still of the fossil fuel. So in terms of transition, this is already better. We've seen also, I did mention the mass transit modes of transportation, whether it's within the cities or between countries. And we are seeing buses run by solar energy, like in Uganda. Here in Egypt, they in 2 years' time they are stopping, their cars, with using petrol. So there's a lot of attention going into the use of cleaner or clean energy when it comes to transport, and we have to weigh that also with the fact that it's a continent that is rapidly urbanizing. It's almost the fastest urbanizing region in the world. So we want to make sure that our new cities are also benefiting from cleaner energy. So in our programs, whether they are the program for infrastructure development in Africa, or IRE, the Renewable Energy Initiative, or the various partnership programs that we are having with our partners, we also are advocating for clean energy and mobility, clean mobility, transport in the cities, urban mobility. That is also our concern, because the continent is still growing and growing very fast, and I want to make sure that it grows better. And I did very much record the point that was mentioned by Her Excellency EU Commissioner on cooling, because the challenge in Africa is cooling, which is going to be huge going forward. So when I made sure also that this is done smartly, smartly meaning a right mix, but also making use of the digital solutions, and also, and I still insist on the point on energy efficiency for manufactured goods and equipments coming to Africa, because it's a joint responsibility to make sure that they are up to the standards that we would like them to see when it comes to emissions. Thank you.
You mentioned standards, so we'll stay with you for the last question, which is about international cooperation. How is the African Union working together with the EU and others to address the challenge of decarbonisation? And what more needs to be done there, in your view?
I think with the European Union, and I'm glad, I'm very happy that Her Excellency is here. With the European Union, we have a strong partnership when it comes to addressing the CO2 emissions through a variety of programs in energy, in transport, and in other areas. And whether they are our goals and priorities at the African Union, we see them reflected, and we see them aligned together with the European Union programs, especially the Green Deal. We are also highlighting our challenges, because this is not the same context either as a continent or as countries within a continent, because the levels of development of each sector differ greatly within Africa itself. But also we do have a strong partnership with the World Bank in the same direction, with the African Development Bank, with other countries, and geothermal, for instance. We are benefiting from the vast experience of New Zealand, and as well as Iceland and Italy, of course, who have been pioneering this sector. So we are building, on the good experiences and the best and success stories in other parts of the world, and the technology that is constantly developing, making the choice of clean energy easier for everybody. So it's no longer, one versus the other. If it's clean and it is also cheap, then why not? Maybe the challenge would be that we are also, some of our countries are producers of oil, and oil has prices have dropped. This could be for some a challenge. But here I recall what I said earlier about COVID-19. COVID-19 showed us that we cannot rely on oil. We cannot rely on imported fuel. And also it had, despite all the tragedies that happened, I think we've seen with our eyes what happened to the world when all these emissions stopped for 2-3 weeks or even a month. The positive implications of stopping the emissions for a few weeks had a wonderful impact when it comes to nature and the quality of air. So I think it was a very strong lesson to all of us what happened over the last months on the choices that we could and should make going forward to make our recovery greener, smarter, and also it generates lots of job opportunities. I think it was IRENA who calculated and said that the use of green energy can generate additional 2 million jobs in Africa. That's a great asset. Let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Abu Zaid. Turning to you now, Kadri Simpson, for the last question. How is the EU with Africa to address the challenge of decarbonisation? Do you believe more cooperation should be encouraged there between the EU and Africa?
Well, the cooperation between the EU and Africa is one of the key priorities of this Commission. And me and Dr. Abu Zaid, we first met this February in Addis Ababa during our college-to-college meeting. So we do believe that African continent holds a great potential with renewable energy, and it is a solution for African nations to bring clean and cost-efficient and reliable energy services to citizens, and giving more attention to clean cooking solutions will be also important. So by adopting innovative technologies and harnessing renewable energy sources and developing integrated energy systems, African countries can build competitive and efficient business, and also small and medium enterprises will benefit with macroeconomic effects to trade and job creation and GDP growth. Well, actually this month, the European Commission has launched a big call for innovative cooperation projects between European and African partners. And the call awards between 5 and 10 million euros to projects that support the productive uses of renewable energy, fostering local sustainable development. So each project needs to have at least 2 African partners involved. So I encourage everyone online to have a look at this opportunity. And our EU hydrogen strategy also proposes to set out a cooperation process on renewable hydrogen with the African Union in the framework of the Africa-Europe Green Energy Initiative. So with a growing interest in clean hydrogen at global level, the strategy recognizes that international cooperation is essential to create a global rules-based market for hydrogen-based solutions, including harmonized safety and environmental standards. And the Commission is therefore very pleased with IRENA's efforts to create a collaborative framework on green hydrogen and stands ready to facilitate these discussions. So besides more cooperation on hydrogen, the aim of this initiative is to coordinate the European financial instruments and put in place an integrated one-stop shop energy program at country and regional level, and to focus less on single projects, but rather on building affordable and efficient and sustainable energy markets at regional level too, so that we can give space to private sector investments too, because we don't have enough funds. We need also private investments and private investors strongly involved. So I believe renewables applications on both industry and transport would be a great avenue for increased cooperation between private businesses in Europe and Africa. And I hope that next days will create also during this format some interesting project ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadri Simpson. We have a few minutes left. Maybe, Mrs. Abouzeid, you could react to what we just heard from Kadri Simpson. It seems the European Union wants to move ahead on energy cooperation with Africa. Do you believe there's an opportunity for some sort of fresh start between the EU and Africa when it comes to energy cooperation?
I think there is an opportunity for the fresh start for all of us. Our partnership with the European Union is a very old one and a very strong one, and we do value very much this partnership. But like we always say, I mean, it's also a dynamic partnership. There is a new situation in the whole world, and which is also making us see things that maybe we did not see before. I did mention that this global crisis is presenting us with a fantastic opportunity, despite all the hardship and the problems and the slowdown in the economies. There is a fantastic opportunity for Africa, particularly, to seize the opportunity to leapfrog. And in that, what we have agreed, and we had a discussion earlier over the last months with the European Union, and including, of course, on energy. Want to maybe scale up, our efforts and double up, on the efforts that we have in order to ensure that we recover into a better world and not resume from where we left before COVID. I do not wish for this to happen, and I'm sure the EU feels the same way. This is a great opportunity, and here we have, I mean, a fantastic situation where we have digitalization, spreading and being recognized by everybody as a major game changer. We do have a situation where we have abundance of young people with creative ideas and innovation ideas. We do have a situation where there is a strong recognition of renewable energy as a major and important source, if not even strategic, for the continent, and also projects within Africa like the free trade area that necessitate, a growing market, a growing mobility, growing trade, and growing manufacturing. So, all the opportunities are here present to us, and what we are working with the European Union, with all our partners, and how to scale up our efforts and partnerships to make that important jump into a better future. Thank you.
Mrs. Abu Zaid, thank you very much once again for sharing those thoughts. And thank you as well, Mrs. Kadri Simpson, for joining us today for this opening session of IRENA's Innovation Week. We're now getting our next speakers lined up. So please bear with us. We will be back in a very short while. We're trying to connect with the new panel. Thank you both once again to you two. Right. Welcome back, everyone. And let's now move straight to the second part of this opening session with a view this time from the private sector. Mr. Borge Brender, thanks for joining us today. You are the president of the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is one of the few international organizations working on public-private sector cooperation. So let me ask you this simple question. Where do you think are the main challenges and opportunities to accelerate the energy transition these days? Do you consider transport and industry as the final frontier in a way when it comes to decarbonisation? And Borge Brenda, you should unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that simple question too. Let me try, and thank you for inviting me and the World Economic Forum to this very timely and important summit. As you also mentioned, we are meeting as the world is navigating a global pandemic, economic uncertainty, and geopolitical instability. And because of this, we risk losing focus on the big topic for this summit, and that is the long-standing but equally important issue, climate change and the low-carbon society that we have to create to fight climate change. According to the World Economic Forum's Energy Transition Index that some of you might be familiar with, an index of the energy systems of 115 economies, 94 countries have improved their readiness to adopt clean energy in the past 5 years. That's quite staggering. But this same analysis makes clear that unless we redouble our commitment to multi-stakeholder action and invest in clean energy and infrastructure, COVID-19 will compromise the transition to cleaner energy systems. So we are concerned that some investments are not happening. Global energy investment is in fact expected to fall by 20% in 2020, and 3 million jobs have been lost already in energy sectors with more at risk. So this is painting a bit of a bleaker picture short term. Still, I'm confident extraordinary measures such as Europe's Green Deal that links stimulus financing with climate-friendly business practices show how business and government can pave a green path forward together. And I'm proud that last month the World Economic Forum signed MOU with IRENA, also focusing on moving into a low-carbon society. This MOU will strengthen collaboration between our organizations and is an example of the public and private sectors coming together to take bold action, particularly in the challenging context that I already mentioned. So more than ever, we need to redouble our efforts on energy transition. According to IRENA's own analysis, each $1 million invested in renewables creates at least 25 jobs. And renewable power generation technologies have become the most cost-effective option for new capacity in almost all parts of the world. And we know what an amazing development there has been for solar. In solar, we have seen an 82% drop in the cost of solar since 2010. No one was seeing this, and this will happen also in other energy sectors, I'm pretty sure, if we are willing to invest. So we know that investing in energy transition will not just help our planet, it will also help our recovery. And that's why it is so good that, for example, the European Union has decided to use 25% of the stimulus to also secure a green transition. Some other countries have much lower part in energy investments, and we should all be inspired by the EU and on this one. Here, I would also like to share 3 priorities when it comes to energy transition and reducing emissions across the energy system, also in sectors where emissions are hard to abate. First, build systemic efficiency. We must have a much sharper focus on energy efficiency and maximize energy productivity. Maybe not as spectacular, but efficiency improvements up to 50% are possible in the transportation sectors, which across industries such as aluminium or steel production, efficiency improvements of 10% to 20% are within reach. And such reductions mean a lot. Digitalization is also a key enabler, creating new opportunities to increase energy productivity, but this requires greater collaboration between businesses and the public sector. Second, we need to scale up the deployment of clean technologies. Solar and wind must continue to be prioritized, but at the same time, we can double down on actions to enable emerging technologies and new areas to scale, such as clean hydrogen and sustainable fuels, clean industrial clusters, clean and efficient cities, circular carbon economy solutions. All four areas have the potentials to become job creators and boosters of energy transition. So let's invest. However, accelerating these areas in the next 10 to 20 years will require alliances and smart government support. And third, and lastly, mobilize finance. We must mobilize investment in clean technologies and deploy it effectively, notably in emerging and developing countries. There's such a multi-$100 billion gap between existing funding and the level needed. Investments are not only needed in new clean energy capacity, but also to transition existing energy infrastructure towards cleaner solution. If we fail to do so, the CO2 emissions from our legacy energy infrastructure will take a big share of the remaining global carbon budget. So let's roll up our sleeves as we're doing with this summit.
Thank you, Mr. Brender. One final question quickly. There is indeed growing interest from the private sector when it comes to fighting climate change. Can you point to areas of success that you see already now when it comes to businesses supporting the transition to net zero emissions?
We really see that the private sector is stepping up and taking a lead here and becoming much more proactive in the pursuit of emissions reduction. So there are many examples where businesses are playing a leadership role in this regard. For example, the universal ESG's metrics for business reporting. Just over a week ago, the Sustainable Development Impact Summit, the World Economic Forum, released a set of universal environmental, social, and governance ESG metrics for businesses reporting. These 21 core and 35 expanded metrics are a roadmap for aligning business performance with stakeholder priorities, including environmental stewardship, really showing that you're walking the talk. So one key metric, for instance, calls for business to report on greenhouse gas emission, its practices and production emit. I'm really proud that 120 members of the Forum's International Business Council have shown strong support for ESG metrics, with some companies suspected to begin incorporating them into the reporting immediately. And what gets reported and measured always gets done, at least most of the cases. We also have industry action groups at the World Economic Forum that has been bringing businesses together to address energy transition alongside economic recovery. Through our industry action groups, we have convened over 120 CEOs in the energy space in over 40 industry dialogues meetings in the last 6 months. So we've been very active on Zoom, and it has been remarkable to see how committed these stakeholders have been to accelerate the transition to a cleaner future and more resilient energy future. So we also have launched a Mission Possible platform. That's my last point. The Forum's Mission Possible platform. We want to be a bit positive is supporting over 200 companies in working toward national commitments under the Paris Agreement. This partnership focuses on decarbonizing the most energy-intensive and hard-to-abate industry sectors. If these industries can get to net zero, we will have removed a third of all global emissions. So let's get together like this with IRENA. Thank you for your leadership, and also get concrete things done together.
Thanks, Mr. Brender, for joining us today and for sharing your views. We're now getting our speakers ready for the next part of this opening session, so please bear with us. We will be back in a minute for the next panel. We're getting started in a minute as soon as the next speakers have turned on their camera. Mr. Abdullah Al-Nuaimi, if you can turn on your camera. There you go. Right. Welcome back to IRENA's Innovation Week. We're now moving on to the third part of this opening session, where I will have the pleasure of welcoming a range of high-level speakers from around the world who will share their views on the role of renewables in decarbonizing transport and industry. And first among them is Dr. Abdullah Al-Nuaimi, the Minister of Climate and Environment of the United Arab Emirates. Mr. Al-Nuaimi, thanks for joining us today. And let me start with this question for you. Your country was among the first to adopt renewable energies in the power sector How do you see now the challenge of addressing CO2 emissions from transport and industry? And what role do you see there for renewables? And if you can, please unmute yourself as well. We can't hear you. Please unmute your microphone. Dr. Al-Nuaimi, we can see you, but we cannot hear what you're saying. Dr. Al-Nuaimi, can you try and switch on your microphone? We still cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, Frederick, for giving me the opportunity to share the views of this fantastic event. And Mr. Brandy has probably made a great introduction to the issue, and he drew a great picture for the clean future. To achieve our target and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we have to look closely into all energy intensive industries and transportation as well. The new IRENA report on reaching zero with the renewables basically examines 7 sectors that are currently not on a decarbonized and sustainable path. As part of its journey of green and sustainable growth, my country, the United Arab Emirates, is seeking to help these 7 industries become greener, since they are also currently the main contributors to our national GDP. In the iron and steel industry, we have developed the region's first commercial scale network for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. In the 2016 Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC, the United Arab Emirates' largest oil and gas producer, launched the Riyadh project. That's the elite project that capture 800,000 tons of carbon dioxide from Emirates steel facilities and transfers it to ADNOC's oil field to be used for enhanced oil recovery. The company aims to expand the capacity of this program 6-fold, with the aim of capturing 5 million tons of carbon dioxide per year by the 2030. This brings us to the chemicals and petrochemicals industry. That includes oil and gas. Our oil and gas sector has been at the global forefront of adapting efficient and climate-friendly industry practices. Earlier this year, ADNOC announced a target to cut down its greenhouse gas emission by 25% by 2030, supported by a set of comprehensive sustainable goals. Having adopted a zero flaring policy in routine operations, our oil and gas companies are regional leaders in flaring avoidance design and operation as well. Another industry under the spotlight is the cement and lime. To cut down the sector emission, I had the opportunity to meet the leaders only last week and agree on a basic to utilize the refuse-derived fuel to power cement factories. Our Emirates RDF plant has just commenced operation last week. Next is the aluminium sector that relies on natural gas to produce electricity for manufacturing needs, and has set emission intensity target that cover a range of industrial processes, power generation, smelting, and casting. The use of state-of-the-art gas turbine technology, better maintenance of plants and equipment, and operational efficiency have resulted in emission grade cuts. A key player in the United Arab Emirates aluminium industry is the Emirates Global Aluminium, the EGA, one of the country's largest companies and one of the world's largest aluminium producer. In 2018, EGA's carbon intensity was 39% lower than the global industry average, while its PFC emission were more than 96% below the global industry average. Now that we are done with the industrial sectors and the seven components, we would take a closer look at the transportation, starting with the roads freight while making transport smarter. The United Arab Emirates stood fast in its commitment to building a railway network in the country to provide faster and cleaner mobility option. The 1,200 kilometer long Ittihad rail is under construction in actually several stages, with the stage 1 route operational for freight movement since January 2016. A single train journey on this line moves approximately 300 trucks from the road, reducing carbon dioxide emission by 70 to 80%. Stage 2 of Ittihad Railway will extend over 600 kilometers with construction works having begun earlier this year. On completion of the network, we will link all major United Arab Emirates industrial zoning and ports and trade hubs. That is the plan. Another focus industry is the industrial aviation. In the field of flagship seawater energy and agriculture systems, SEAS integrates school agriculture, honeypath agriculture, and mangrove culture to produce sustainable biofuel to power plants, among others. And in shipping, we are exploring also the use of biofuels, green hydrogen, synthetic fuels, and green methane, ammonia, and methane that can become a game changer, as a matter of fact, to ensure that the use that these efforts to green our industry achieve the desired result. We need effective partnership between the public and the private sector. We must join forces to explore innovative solutions that can help us build a more sustainable future, which is why platforms such as IRENA Innovation Week is so important for us.
Mr. Al-Nuaimi, a very quick question to round up. I understand your country is exploring new ways of utilizing its abundant renewable resources. Can you share with us maybe a few examples of that and share also the lessons that you've learned already now from those experimentations?
I am very proud to share these lessons. The United Arab Emirates basically is a global pioneer in the field of renewable energy. We launched our first 10 megawatt solar photovoltaic plant in Masdar City the year 2009. Since then, we have focused on harnessing the full potential of our solar resources and have installed more than 2.4 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. Our large-scale renewable energy projects include the 5 gigawatt Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, set to be fully operational in the 2030, and the 1 gigawatt Noor Abu Dhabi, at present the world's largest single-site solar power plant with 3.2 million solar panels that started commercial operation on June last year. An additional capacity of 5,987 megawatt is under development or planned to be developed by the year 2030. Our country is about to become actually home to a new solar power plant with a capacity of 2 gigawatt. In April 2020, only 6 months ago, the winning bid of the project broke yet another world record for the lowest solar power generation cost of 1.35 US cents per kilowatt hour. These projects will help us achieve the ambitious clean energy target that we have set for ourselves. 27% of our energy mix by 2020, and as we committed, 50% by 2050. We have also supporting international renewables ventures, having invested in projects of a total of $16.8 billion across 70 countries worldwide.
Thank you, Mr. for your time today. Let me now welcome the UK Minister of State at the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Mr. Kwesi Kwarteng. Mr. Kwarteng, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Mr. Kwarteng, thanks for accepting our invitation to speak at IRENA's Innovation Week. How is the UK considering the challenge of decarbonisation in sectors like cement, steel, chemicals, aviation, maritime shipping, in a way that's consistent with the country's goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050?
I mean, obviously, we're thinking about these issues very keenly. I mean, people will know that the UK committed itself to net zero carbon emissions by 2050 by law. So the law was passed only a year ago in 2019. And I have to say that I think there has been considerable progress made. If you look at the power generation sector, we've managed to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. We've managed to reduce our dependence on burning coal. And of course, this has a direct impact on our energy mix in the industries that you've mentioned. Many of these industries in the past were dependent on the burning of coal in particular. Now we have a much wider deployment of renewable energy, particularly offshore wind, where capacity of offshore wind is something like 30 gigawatts globally. And of that, the UK has between 35 and 40% of the global installation. Now that figure might reduce as other countries adopt this technology, but it's still a huge proportion of offshore wind to many businesses in the UK, industrial businesses that you referred to, are now reliant on offshore wind. They're reliant on more renewable technology. And this is a huge change from where we were even just 15 years ago, where coal still played a big part in driving our economic activity.
Mr. Kwarteng, the UK will be hosting the COP26 next year. What do you think needs to be achieved in Glasgow when it comes to reducing or even eliminating emissions from industry and transport?
I think, COP26, let me just say this, and before I proceed, I would just want to thank you all for being able to listen to me and giving me the opportunity, the platform in this great IRENA context to answer questions. I apologize if I have to dash off. We've got our Conservative Party conference, and I've got a number of functions there. So apologies beforehand. In terms of the COP26, I think that the ask, if you like, is very clear. It's an international forum. I think we want to see a huge degree of international cooperation. Firstly and primarily, I think we would like to see countries come forward with stronger NDCs, nationally determined contributions ahead of COP26. We've defined 5 areas: nature, finance, adaptation, resilience, transport, and energy. And of course, energy includes industry, which was the question that you asked at the beginning. I think that COP26 couldn't have really come at a better time for us, because as I alluded to, we managed to secure the legislation last year, which mandated the UK, which basically legally bound the UK government to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. In that context, our presidency of the COP26 will be a huge drive or signal a huge commitment to that legislation. And we're very hopeful that friends and partners, allies across the world will also be joining us in that endeavor. And we want to be able to come out of COP26 with a renewed commitment to decarbonisation. And the way we do this...
We'll jump straight to the next part of the event, where Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA, makes some concluding remarks. Francesco, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Francesco La Camera, please go ahead.
Okay, so can you give me the floor?
Yes, you can get started. We can't... Right, now we can see you.
Oh, that's good.
And we can hear you well, which is an improvement on the first part of this event. Go ahead, Francesco.
Okay, I will go. So I understand that we had this this problem, and we can go to the conclusion of this opening section. And naturally, we will try to make all the best to have the intervention of the 3 ministers on our website, so you can go and listen to them later today. So my first thought is obviously to thank you, Frederick, for your facilitating role, for your coordination of this opening session, and naturally I wish to express my sincere thanks to our distinguished speaker. I think that this is inspiring and very encouraging to hear how far-sighted strategies and policy and innovative approaches and solutions that are emerging at a scale. As we all need innovation solution, getting to the 1.3 degree pathway requires progress in all sectors of the economy, as we just heard. It also requires significant technical and economic efforts, particularly so in carbon-intensive sector of industry and transport. Addressing these challenges cannot be deferred any longer. I think Commissioner Simpson and then also other intervention make this very clear. The latest study from the IPCC showed the window of opportunities for meaningful action is closing fast. It is not only a matter of technology and finance. Delivering deep decarbonization of energy also requires a change of the mindset. Options that merely reduce emissions are not sufficient. Policymakers and industry investors need to focus unwittingly on scaling up on those few options that are consistent with the zero emission goal. IRENA's Reaching Zero with Renewables study provides an in-depth review of its task and discussion. This week, we'll explore those further. 4 of the most energy-intensive industries and 3 key transport sectors stand out as the hardest to decarbonize. Together, those 7 sectors could account for 38% of energy and process emission and 29% of final energy use by 2050, unless major policy changes are pursued now. But 2 changes in recent years should allow for faster and deeper cuts in emission. Firstly, we need for deep decarbonization across all sectors is now widely recognized and accepted, despite the challenges involved. Secondly, steady and continuous cost reduction for renewable energy open up a wider range of technology options. Our analysis identifies several options in each sector. However, those options are yet to become commercially mature or ready for wide adoption. To move this forward, a clear strategy for industry and transport at both national and multinational level, as expressed by Commissioner Abzey, with a clear end goal of zero emission must be put in place. Such a strategy should be built on the 5 technologies pillar of demand reduction of energy efficiency, renewable electricity, renewable heat and biofuel, green hydrogen and e-fuels, and as appropriate, carbon removal technologies. Over the next 4 days, we will hear from speakers from the public and private sector. See Mr. Brenda give you an overview on how the public and private may working together, showcasing solutions that they are supporting. We look forward to explore in more depth with you topics such as the smart electrification of end-use sector, the supply of renewable fuels, best practice and innovative approach to sustainable supply of biomass and biofuels, as well as exploring renewable solutions for industry transformation. I'm also very pleased that we'll have a section with you. To ensure that we have a wide and deep range of perspective, we partner with a number of expert organizations in the planning and delivery of each session. I'd like to express our appreciation to the COP25 and COP26 presidency, the Electric Power Research Institute, the Hydrogen Council, Initiate and the SDG7 Youth Constituency, the International Transport Forum, the Global Energy Partnership, and last but not least, the World Economic Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we have barely begun our journey on the pathway to decarbonizing industry and transport, and there are many challenges to overcome. But my message and the message of Innovation Week is a positive one. Through innovation and collaboration, we can deliver a transformation of the global energy system for a resilient, inclusive, and climate-proof economy. I hope you will join us throughout the week, and I look forward to fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Back to you, Frederick, and thanks again for your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesco. It was a pleasure for me to moderate this opening session, in spite of the small technical glitches that we experienced at the end. I guess this is something we're now getting accustomed to with virtual events. And as Francesco said, you will be able to find these interventions later on the IRENA website. So thanks to all the speakers once again, as well as to the audience for attending. I hope you enjoyed this opening session as much as I did. Coming up this afternoon is a session on the electrification of end-use sectors. So don't forget to tune in at 5 o'clock this afternoon to hear more about this. In the meantime, I wish you a very pleasant day and a great week with IRENA. Bye-bye.